It's the often broke British brand that makes beautiful race-bred beasts that Bond brazenly borrows to beat baddies and bash bumpers. A badge whose ownership has changed hands more times than sixpence in Camden Market on Boxing Day, but has remained the pinnacle of luxury and performance. Governor, this is everything you need to know to get up to speed on Aston Martin. You want to win an Aston Martin? We partnered with Omaze again to bring you this special episode of Up to Speed. Stick around to the end to find out how you can win, or go to omaze.com/vantage right now to enter. Actually, don't go right now. Watch the rest of the episode. It was 1913 in a small workshop in London where two auto enthusiasts, Lionel Martin and Robert Bamford, decided that boring stuff like selling cars and working as mechanics wasn't their cup of tea. They fancied themselves as race car drivers. After all, they competed in the Aston Hill Climb in the village of Aston Clinton. Oh, Robert, let's be done with other people's cars. Let's build our own car. Can we talk about this after the race? But I want to talk about this now! Stop being a fuzzy-winkle. I am not a fuzzy-winkle. Martin, bully Bamford. You know that's what they call you at the cricket club. After all of that, Bamford and Martin formed a car company and put a four-cylinder Coventry Simplex engine into a 1908 Isotta Francini. By 1915, they had their first car, known as the Coal Scuttle, because it looked like a coal scuttle. You don't know what a coal scuttle is because you were born in this century? Well, it's a bucket for coal. Bucket for coal. The official name, however, was Aston Martin, a lovely sounding combination of Lionel's last name and their favorite hill climb. In a bout of bad timing, World War I came knocking on their doors. Gentlemen, there's someone at the door for you. They sound quite angry. Pish posh, who would come calling on a Sunday? Martin enlisted with the Admiralty. That's the British Navy. While Bamford went into the Army. They sold all their production materials and put the business on hold for a few years. By 1919, they were both back home designing a new car in a new shop, but Bamford bailed out within a year. In 1920, wealthy young race car driver Count Louis Zabrowski swooped in with some cash to help Martin build his car. You've probably never heard of Zabrowski, but you might have heard of one of his other cars. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Seriously. It was a real racing car. 2 years later, Martin debuted 3 1.5-liter race cars in the French Grand Prix, all of which went on to set world speed records and endurance records. The Green P, the Razor Blade, and the Halford Special. They also built 55 cars to sell, but the company was out of money just 2 years later. This time, some rich old bird named Lady Charnwood bought it out and put her little baby son on the company board. Apparently, that was a mistake because the company went belly up a year later, just like my goldfish just did this morning. I am powering through. It's been a long day without you, my friend. But I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. I can't wait to meet you in heaven. The factory closed, and a tired and frustrated Lionel Martin called it quits. He went to work in his family's lime and chalk business full time. Lime and chalk? What are they, Gorons? Lady Charnwood tried to save the company again in 1926 with 2 new investors, Bill Renwick and Augustus Bert Bertelli. They officially named it Aston Martin Motors and started building mostly open 2-seater sports cars and race cars. There was the International, the Le Mans, the Ulster, just like I got in my tummy, the Speed Model, and they did very well in the races, including Le Mans and Miglia. Racing ain't cheap, and more money troubles hit the young company in 1932. Investors kept it afloat, and they focused solely on street cars starting in 36. Then, they ran into another snag. Lady Charnwood, World War II is at the door. They need airplanes. Pish posh! Don't they know it's Sunday? So Aston Martin began making airplane parts for the British war effort. Despite material shortages, in 1939, boss man Gordon Sutherland commissioned one of the world's first fully functional concept cars, the Aston Martin Atom. They managed to build a comfortable and lightweight performance sedan with modern tubular space frame design. Sutherland registered the Atom concept car and personally drove it over 100,000 miles during the war. Future Aston Martins were all inspired by the Atom. I also realized that Colby is definitely going to use Donald Sutherland for this man. With Europe in shambles, business did not look promising. Aston Martin made only 680 cars during the war, and Sutherland decided to sell. He advertised Aston Martin as a high-class motor business in the newspaper. He put his car company in the classifieds in the newspaper. David Brown, owner of a ginormous engineering company that dealt in gearboxes and tractors, took the Atom concept for a drive in 1947 and promptly decided to buy Aston Martin. He also picked up struggling luxury maker Lagonda and its Bentley-designed engines, forming Aston Martin Lagonda, as it still exists today. The revived company put a few new Aston Martin 2-liter Sports on the road in 1948. That was the name of the car, but nowadays it's referred to as the DB1, the first of the famous DB series. DB as in David Brown. Duh! The DB2 was the first Aston to feature an inline 6-cylinder engine and was super successful in racing. They wanted to get away from the Bentley motors though, so they hired Polish engineer Tadek Marek to help design their own. Hey, how many Polish engineers does it take to design an Aston Martin engine? 100? No, you knucklehead! 1! The dude was brilliant! The beautiful Italian-style DB4 debuted at the 1958 London Motor Show. The public started to take notice of the small British automaker. They were drooling over that DB4, baby. They was like, ooh, that's a good-looking car. Ooh, I want one. Ooh, I can't stop the spit from running out of my mouth because it's so good-looking. Aston Martin was still heavily involved in racing too, and it's rumored that Brown only bought the company because he really wanted to race. In 1959, the DBR1 won the World Sports Car Championship with 3 consecutive wins at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Nürburgring, and the International Tourist Trophy, a feat only previously accomplished once by Ferrari. You ever heard of them? The first of 5 original DBR1s raced by Sterling Moss and Carroll Shelby sold for $22.5 million in 2017, making it the most expensive British car in history. $22.5 million? That's a lot of mojo, baby. The last factory-built Aston Martin race car was the 1963 DP215 competition prototype. It was built on the DB4 GT chassis in just 2 months to compete with Ferrari at Le Mans. Though it was originally supposed to have a V8, it ended up with a torquey 4-liter inline-6 mated to an old 5-speed transmission from the slower DBR1. That proved to be a little bit of a weak link, and the tranny failed after just 3 hours. On the bright side, it was the first car to break the 300-kilometer-an-hour barrier on the Mulsanne Straight, ultimately hitting 319 kilometers per. Okay, side note, I'm saying kilometers because it's a British car on a European course. Don't get used to it. Anyway, there's only one of these bad boys in the world, which is why some lucky bloke had to pay $21.5 million to get his hands on it. If Aston thought the DB4 was popular, it was nothing compared to the amount of attention they got when James Bond drove onto the movie screens in this stunning silver DB5 and gold figure. Bond's DB5 was equipped with revolving license plates, GPS, tire slashers, oil slick, machine guns, and most importantly, an ejector seat. Almost overnight, Aston Martins became some of the most desirable cars in the world. The 4-seat DBS debuted in 1967 and sported the company's first V8 in 1969. But the company still wasn't making any money. Aston Martin made some awesome cars during the David Brown years, but he couldn't keep it going anymore without turning a profit. He sold it in 1972. And then the new owners had to sell it again because of the gas crisis. Man, they get knocked down, but then they get up again. They're never gonna keep them down. You know, they take a vodka drink, they take a whiskey drink, they take a lager drink. The Muscular V8 Vantage came out in 1977. It had a 5.3-liter V8 and made 390 horsepower, earning it the title of Britain's first supercar. It was sexy. It was in this Bond film. It went toe-to-toe with the Lamborghini Countach, the Ferrari Daytona, and the Porsche 911, and often it came out on top. It was so good, Aston Martin built it all the way up through 1989. During the same time period, the company also made the wedge-shaped Lagonda luxury sedan. It looks sick. It was the first car to have LED digital instruments and had other futuristic features like touch-sensitive switches and pop-up freaking headlights on a giant sedan. I love this thing. When it was new, the hand-built Lagonda was the world's fastest production four-seater and one of the most expensive sedans in the world. I own 4 of them. In 1987, Ford took a stake in the company, and in 1988, the Vanquish was the first new Aston Martin produced in 20 years. The DB line was also set to return with the upcoming DB7, and they needed a lot more money to make it happen. So Ford bought the rest of Aston and added it to the premier Auto Group, along with other recent acquisitions, Jaguar, Land Rover, and Volvo. The DB7 was Aston Martin's most successful model to date, with more than 7,000 built by the time the DB9 came out. In 2001, the 5.9-liter V12 Vanquish became Aston Martin's new flagship, and their fastest production model ever in terms of top speed. In the entire 90-year stretch between 1913 and 2003, Aston Martin built fewer than 15,000 cars. But things really turned around in the 21st century, and over 45,000 cars have been made since 2003. The V8 Vantage reappeared in 2005, and Aston partnered with ProDrive to create a motorsport division and make an official return to racing. Hell yeah! But it wasn't long before Ford decided to dismantle the PAG group and sell the brands off. Every time they think they got it figured out, their dad is like, okay, I'm gonna leave forever. You're like, oh. Hey, smash that like button if you hate your dad. But Astons were still selling well. And now that they were selling well, there was enough money to develop an uber expensive Aston Martin 177. Production was limited to 77 cars. I have 3 of them, with price tags around 1.5 million bones. They were made with handcrafted aluminum body panels on carbon fiber chassis, with power coming from a 7.3-liter V12 making 750 horsepower with a top speed of 220 miles per hour. I'm trying to do a live up to speed. Who's calling me? Hello? James, this is Aston Martin. Hate to bother you, but we're just calling to make sure you're not forgetting the signet. I'm not closing the episode with the signet. It does make sense chronologically. Look, this episode's almost done, and I'm not ending with the signet, all right? The Aston Martin Valkyrie is Aston's most advanced car in the company's history, developed with the help from the Red Bull Formula One team and legendary race car designer Adrian Newey. The Valkyrie is powered by an 1,100 horsepower V12 and sticks to the road with the help from the craziest aerodynamics ever devised. It's so crazy that it's not even street legal. Track only, baby. Yeah. Yo, we have partnered with Omaze again, and this time we're giving away an Aston Martin. You like all the Aston Martins we talked about? Did you like looking at this sweet, sweet car? Well, you could win one just like it. Not only are you entering to win a sweet Aston Martin Vantage with taxes and shipping covered, but every donation also supports a great cause. Folds of Honor is an organization that provides educational scholarships to spouses and children of America's fallen and disabled servicemen. So go to omaze.com/vantage and enter today. You could win an Aston Martin just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button. You want to buy a shirt? Shop.donut.media. Follow me on Instagram at James Pumphrey. Follow Donut at Donut Media. Watch this episode of Up to Speed. Watch this episode of Wheelhouse. I love you. Go in the comments and tell me something sweet. Sponsor me. Sponsor me, deodorant companies.